Over the next 10 minutes, I'm going to introduce you to Christopher Bertke, a near 30-year-old music producer who often chooses to take his middle name, Nick, and more commonly a stage name, Pogo. I'm going to introduce you to his work, his views, and him as a person, and why this all adds up to him being a genuinely awful person in the long 10 years I have spent enjoying his work.
If something is important to you, you should voice your opinion about it. Don't let people tell you you shouldn't say that. You shouldn't have that opinion. That's not a good opinion. Those aren't nice words. That's not polite. Here's the deal. You don't want people in your life who are going to judge your character based on the words that come out of your mouth. You want people who are going to look at where you're coming from, and you want people who are going to look at the context of your words, which are vastly more important things.
It's a story that starts all the way back in 2008, the dark ages of YouTube, with a remix of the popular Walt Disney property Alice in Wonderland.
Start at the beginning.
Yeah. And when you come to the end, stop.
I'm not too sure why I started with Alice in Wonderland. There's just something about the film that really captured me as a child. There's a certain magic to the way Disney used to make their movies. I think there's a certain charm in the animation and in the themes that the film dealt with. And so I thought, if I'm going to start remixing a film, I'd really like to try capturing that.
To date, and by quite a considerable margin, Nick's oldest video is his most popular, clocking in a massive 21 million views at time of production. Whilst admittedly his first remix was very basic in terms of composition, the Australian-based music producer went on to continue the trend, creating more elaborate and more nostalgic songs, hitting success after success. And with those successes came a very loyal fan base, most of which has stuck around ever since, looking forward to what came next from the mind of the producer, giving such a fresh take to remixes.
An interesting thing is that I actually disabled comments for a good couple of months. I disabled thumbs up, I disabled ratings and comments, and I made a ton of work in that time because I found it quite liberating in a weird way to know that my work wasn't being hyped, to know that it wasn't being criticized, it wasn't being scrutinized, it wasn't being commented on or discussed. In a way, it was like the only way now to communicate with people was to just put music out.
I think what made Pogo so different from the other artists is that he used source materials and the TV and movies he built his remixes out of in a pretty unique and different way, rather than using what some people would consider inherently musical, such as piano, bass, drums, etc. Pogo used very short sampled clips of voice from the source material, turning it into its own instrument to often awesome effect. Because of this, he's received recognition from several big names and has worked with the likes of Disney Pixar, YouTube, Microsoft, clothing companies, travel agencies, and more, propelling his videos and nostalgia-inducing content to more and more people, further propelling him into YouTube stardom. It's amazing that someone who is widely revered at producing music that invokes such feelings of love could invoke such feelings of hate over the last few days. Indeed, it's a problem that's been in the works for many, many years, and has reached as what some may see as a justified pinnacle. Now, for the purpose of this video, I'm very aware of the divided opinion on the things that Nick Bertke has said. I think it's very important to know about him and the things he said as a whole, because a lot of people have been approaching this subject with a fresh outlook of not previously watching his content in great lengths, either outside of his music or at all. all. Indeed, his second channel, Nick Mix, is where most of the personality behind the music comes into play, and my oh my, is it colourful. Nick's never been shy of showing his political side and what he thinks about political correctness. He's been very vocal about things in past live streams and vlog-style episodes on his second channel, to sometimes mixed effect. I think it's also highly important to recognise that these views have landed Nick in hot water before, and it certainly isn't the first time he's gone off the rails, previously having what could only be described as a mental breakdown on Twitter, posting abusive stuff to anybody who tweeted him, and releasing what could only be described as very peculiar songs to his SoundCloud with even weirder titles. With the sort of things that have come out this week, one may say that this sort of thing was satirical or a joke, but indeed, Nick ended up 180ing a few days later, posting the following to his website. I have decided to delete my Twitter, Facebook, Tumblr and SoundCloud pages. I'm writing this entry for everybody who has supported me to explain my reasoning. I'm putting social media behind me. It's become an unhealthy part of my life and a danger to the personal relationship I have with my work. I feel I've been in the public eye for too long, leaning on it as a crutch for personal validation and dealing with expectations and demands every day. The pressure has finally driven me a bit nuts. I don't have the drive to deal with PR anymore. And, true to his word, Nick deleted his social media accounts. If this was intended as a joke, Nick certainly didn't end up thinking it was.
Strike?
Flash forward to 2015. It seemed that the promise of leaving social media hadn't stuck around, and Pogo had made new social media profiles, 180ing from his previous decision to focus on work instead of the public. Indeed, just 1 year later of his peculiar antics on social media, Nick posted 2 blog posts and an audio recording of himself summarising the blog articles.
I've always found that the more I treat a woman like a child, the stronger the relationship, the better the sex, and the more often it happens. Discipline, reprimand, and complete indifference. I think the feminine woman craves the attributes of a firm father in the man she enters a relationship with. In fact, the more I realize that women want to be manned around, the more I see feminism in a different light. It could well be little more than the collective feminine cry for drama and childlike retaliation.
As you can imagine, there was a pretty large backlash from this, and many people, rightfully so, were not happy at all that somebody who they'd idolised for years had such an awful view of women in general, and even if it was intended as a joke, it was in pretty poor taste, and the majority of people were saying so. If Nick had intended the 2014 incident to be a joke, it's clear that he hadn't learned from this new one. As you can imagine, a few days later Nick posted an update blog article on the video and 2 other posts, having removed them both. I recently conducted somewhat of an experiment for myself that went with a much bigger bang than I expected. I'm awestruck by the enormous breed of hyenas out there, taking gender equality and feminism hostage, and bending it into a social status to validate their feeling that the world owes them everything because of their gender. Feminism is about equality for everybody, they parrot. That part I couldn't agree more with. But men aren't qualified to talk about it? Pardon? No, come on now. I uploaded videos and blog posts to draw this mentality out, just to see how much it plagues my own circles and how far people actually take it. I mashed together the most radical views I could find about women and feminism on the internet, doing my best to present it as my humble opinion and honest observations. It wasn't long before my Twitter, which I hadn't touched in months, was absolutely blazing with self-proclaiming humanitarians, putting every one of their principles through the shredder and back again. 1 or 2 people had very good and level-headed things to say, but watching the rest was like watching a bunch of vegetarians turn cannibal and tear apart a newborn. While it's been fun and educational, I honestly wasn't expecting such an enormous and depressing reaction, and I've since replaced the video with my real views. It's confirmed to me that I don't want social media in my life any longer. It provokes a horrendous amount of arrogance from people, just as it has from myself over the years. I've deleted my Twitter for good and will continue to disable comments and ratings on my future uploads. For a long time now, I've looked at social media as a catalyst for antisocial behaviour, but this has taken it to a whole new level for me, and it's no longer something I want to be a part of. Once again, Nick deleted his Twitter account, supposedly for good this time, because of, in his words, the people who had come out of the woodwork. This time Nick used the "it was a joke" to provoke reaction. But with such things said in an article, I'm unsure how he could not see that there wouldn't be a reaction to it. Nick is a public figure, and he's known as a music producer, not a social commentator. With his antics from 2014, you'd have thought that he would have realised that his actions would have consequences, but maybe it took another social experiment, as Nick called it, to learn that people do not appreciate this kind of behaviour from him. 3 years pass and Nick once again opens a Twitter account. Instead of @PogoMix, he now becomes @NickBertke. With the expectation of some slightly off-colour things he said in blogs and live streams, Nick actually remained in control of himself and watched what he said online as a direct result. And then this video showed up, and all hell broke loose.
I came up with fagottron because I've always had a very thorough dislike of homosexuals. I've never liked a grown man acting like a 12-year-old girl. I've always found that to be quite disgusting. When there was the Orlando shooting and the guy was shouting Allahu Akbar or something, I was like... But yeah, I've got to be a bit careful with that because, well, you know, I don't like gays, but I don't want to see people getting killed in nightclubs either.
In a video that resurfaced thanks to Reddit, Nick explained that his great dislike for homosexuals, wishing the attacker of the Orlando nightclub shooting well because of such disdain.
Perth-based Nick Bertke is a YouTube star. Also known as DJ Pogo, now he's broadcasting his hatred of the gay community to more than 700,000 subscribers.
Gays are just an abomination.
Even praising the Orlando nightclub shooting, which left 49 people dead.
This is probably the most backlash Nick ever received for such an experiment, as he liked to call it, and with good reason. With such awful things being said, and with some arguing even more than his feminism video, Nick released a video statement for the first time to his second channel.
Oh dear, the controversy I have sparked. What have I done? Now, I will never forget being driven through San Francisco, which is the gay capital of America, by the gay director of one of Disney's digital marketing companies. And he turned around and he said to me at the traffic lights, "Nick, why is your channel called fagottron?" And I could feel my heart sinking into my stomach, and I could feel my manager sitting next to me face palming. I could feel the palm of his face going straight through his forehead. I've written blog posts about women. I've made a video about gays. That particular video recently has been circulating the web. It has been brought to my attention by my good friend Val. Now, I think the fantastic irony here is Val is gay, and he's one of my many supporters and friends who are gay. This guy knows it's full of shit. He knows I'm grinding people's gears, and he said, "Nick, you might just want to say something about this because many people are thinking ill of you. Like, you've convinced them big time."
Once again, Nick had 180'd, just like he did with the feminism rant and his Twitter breakdown before it. The problem I have with this is, if indeed he intended it to be a parody or satirical, then why would he do something like this after feeling such a great wave of shame when the gay Disney director asked him about his channel URL? It mustn't have left much of a lasting impression, because for somebody to say such dreadful things, even as a joke, with 2 prior events mentioned in this video showing him that his actions have huge repercussions. So we're all left with this must be his thoughts on the matter, as we know he has a history of going off the rails. You can like Nick's music, you can like him as a person, you can think that all the things he has said and will say are in jest, but at the end of the day, when you're a person who is in the public eye, you have to watch what you say with great care and attention, because there are going to be people out there who will take what you say at face value, despite the intended message, if indeed this has been what Nick always intended it to be, an experiment. It does not change the fact that what he has said was hugely offensive. It's not hard to believe either that Nick, an Australian, has grown up around and probably continues to coexist with some of the more homophobic people ever seen in the world, and when you put 2 and 2 together, all of a sudden it actually becomes very plausible that someone like him could be 100% genuine on the things he said and will say. I could push past the Twitter insanity. The feminism stuff put me off him as a person, but this is inexcusable. I can't keep giving people chances, because when this sort of thing is considered of their normal behaviour, you start second guessing if it's genuine or not. And as somebody who has driven many hours into producing fan videos for his tracks, I'm disappointed that someone such as Nick cannot learn to keep his views and behaviour in check, because this is absolutely the thing that is going to destroy what he spent over 10 years working on.